We're watching Press TV's News Review, where we look deeper into some of the top stories of the day. Iran has lashed out at 3 European parties to the 2015 nuclear deal known as the JCPOA after they issued a joint statement on the country's nuclear program. Iran's envoy to the International Atomic Energy Agency has called on the European troika not to adopt provocative and unconstructive approaches. Mohsen Naziri urged the E3 to show goodwill instead of and look for a friendly solution to a mutual source of concern. He expressed worries that the European Union and the three countries are still resorting to well-worn tactics. Naziri said they're playing a nasty politically motivated game aimed at undermining Iran's cooperation with the IAEA. This statement by the E3, namely France, Germany, and the UK, was issued on Tuesday at a meeting of the IAEA's Board of Governors. The statement accuses Iran of escalating its nuclear program beyond civilian justification. The three European states also claim that Iran's nuclear activities are, quote, a clear threat to regional and global security. The allegations are leveled while Iran is cooperating with the UN nuclear watchdog. Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have political scientist Mr. Heinz Gärtner joining us from Vienna. Also joining us from London, we have political columnist Said Shahabi. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start off with our guest in Vienna. Give us your thoughts on how events have transpired so far, about the initial E3 statement and the reaction that Iran has shown in response to that.
Yes, of course, it is a very strong statement and accusing Iran of escalating the issue. However, the statement, you can read between the lines, also recognizes that there has been progress between Iran and the IAEA on several issues, like the contaminated particles and the 83% enrichment, and also the E3 statement says that the EU and the E3 will be committed to the JCPOA. So the intentions of this statement is that Iran might clarify and provide more explanations of these outstanding issues. There are some outstanding issues in order to be able to return to the negotiations of the JCPOA, because if this outstanding issues, there are some locations, the undeclared locations of traces, enriched uranium traces, and there are some issues about surveillance. If these issues are not resolved, some countries in the IAEA and also the US and in the European Union might resist to go back to the JCPOA. So one can see it in a positive way as well. And I have to say, at the same time, the US issued a statement which was softer than the statement of the E3. And you can feel that the US also recognizes the progress that have been made between the Director General of the IAEA and Iran on certain issues.
Sure, let's cross over now to Mr. Said Shahabi in the British capital, London. Mr. Shahabi, give us your thoughts on the stance that the E3 has now shown. I think it would be safe to say that it's basically the European countries in the JCPOA are dancing to the tune of the United States at this point.
Thank you very much. In addition to what my colleague has said, this statement by the E3 illustrates several problems. Number one, that it is saying things that are not in line with what the Secretary General of the IAEA said. That he said that what Iran says is generally within what he expected. So Iran did not report something false about its activities. So what Iran is claiming is in line with what the Secretary General has said. This is number one. Number two, the other complication is the refusal by America and the European Union to go back to the negotiating table in Vienna to continue negotiating the JCPOA, and unless that is done, such complications will always arise. There will be claims and counterclaims by Iran and by the E3 and America. So the issue is there. There is an outstanding issue, but also it is complicated by including other issues as America is trying to impose on Iran with regards to its defense systems, with missile testing, the hypersonic missile test this week is also complicating the issue from American point of view, which takes Israel's defense as the main criteria for any of its approaches to the nuclear issue with Iran. So there are many complications, and unless they sit down in Vienna again and revisit the JCPOA, the situation will continue to go this side or the other side.
Let's go back to our guest in Vienna. Looking at the statement the E3, namely France, Germany, and the UK issued on Tuesday at the meeting of the IAEA Board of Governors, the statement accuses Iran of escalating its nuclear program beyond civilian justification. I want to get your thoughts on that. As we know, the allegations are leveled against Iran as it's in full cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog, but there is one entity that is not cooperating with the nuclear watchdog and is not a signatory to the NPT, and that's the Israeli regime, which is known to have nuclear warheads and is also considered to be a major threat to regional security in the region.
Now, first of all, I want to say yes, there is cooperation between Iran and the IAEA, and the wording used by the Director General was on certain issues. There are possible explanations, and the explanations are not unsatisfactory. So he did not say the issues are closed. So there's still room for further cooperation. That's what the E3 also are saying, and also the issues which are not resolved. But I have to say, if you read closely the statement and also the statement by the US, it's a political statement. It's a political statement and doesn't have consequences. So it's, I guess it's the purpose is to keep pressure on Iran to address the other issues, because it only says the issues have to be resolved in the framework for the Board of Governance. It doesn't threaten Iran to refer the issue to the Security Council or something like that. So there is possible room that it can be resolved in the next Board of Governor meetings and maybe the General Conference in September, and negotiations about the JCPOA can restart maybe in fall. And these issues, the remaining issues on these undeclared locations, they don't have directly to do with the JCPOA. They are the safeguard issues. But of course, safeguard issues has to be resolved in order that the IAEA can say Iran's nuclear program is entirely peaceful. And of course, it did not really use this wording entirely. It's entirely peaceful. So, but once the IAEA can say this, there is no obstacle anymore to return to the JCPOA. And when it comes to Israel, would you say, of course, Israel is concerned about this nuclear program and bring up any issue which might be an obstacle for the JCPOA. But at the end of the day, it's the negotiating parties to the JCPOA who decide whether to continue with the negotiations.
Same question to you, Mr. Shahabi. Give us your thoughts on the issue of the Israeli regime and its nuclear program, which has no oversight by the UN Nuclear Watchdog Agency. It's not a signatory to the NPT. It's considered as a major threat to regional security. Also, apart from that, talking about the E3 countries in the JCPOA, how would you assess their performance overall with regards to upholding their position and their conditions in the JCPOA with regards to Iran?
Well, number one, Israeli issue will always remain a problem, even to the Europeans who see that there is definitely a double standards in the whole issue. How can you put such pressure on Iran while ignoring the nuclear program of Israel? How do you justify putting so much pressure on Iran, which is a signatory to the NPT, and which allows the inspectors from the IAEA to inspect its facilities, while ignoring the demands by the Arab countries to put some pressure on Israel to stop its nuclear, military side of its nuclear project. It has more than 250 nuclear warheads, and at a time when everybody is calling for a Middle East which is free of weapons of mass destruction, including the nuclear weapons. So the Israeli issue will always remain a sticking point in any negotiations, whether it is with Iran or with Saudi Arabia now that it is hoping to establish its own nuclear project, or the United Arab Emirates or Egypt. So there is really a proliferation problem here, and Israel is the problem, not Iran's problem. It is not the Iranian nuclear project that is the problem. The problem is the Israeli issue, because it is not being targeted by the West as being in contravention of the IAEA rules and in contravention of the demand that it should be inspected by inspectors from the IAEA. So it is a very complicated issue, and the Western countries have to address these issues seriously.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Heinz Giertner joining us from Vienna, and Saeed Shabi joining us from the British capital, London. With that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of the News Review. But stick around. There's plenty more to come here on Press TV.